many of you, it's your worst nightmare? Your son or daughter comes home from school and they have homework and they need your help, and it's math. Well, I volunteer in classrooms and I always ask that question of the students. I say, who likes math? And in first through fourth grade, almost every student raises their hand. A few drop off in fifth and through middle school until by the time they get to high school, only one or two kids are raising their hands that they like math. I usually ask the dissenters in high school, so why do you say you don't like math? And I'll often hear something along the lines of, I don't do math. Bothers me. One morning I was out on a run after hearing that the previous day. And as I was running, I was noticing that as I would approach curbs on all these side streets, I was never having to adjust my stride. And I thought to myself, either I have the perfect stride where I never have to adjust my stride because these streets are different distances apart and different widths, or maybe something else is going on. So I decided to pay attention to how I was running, which since I run in the dark, I probably should have been doing to begin with. But what I noticed is that as I would approach a curb, I would adjust my path just a little bit, either to the right or to the left, and that is the moment I knew it. I have an awesome brain. I mean, my brain is doing these fantastic mathematic calculations while I'm just zoned out on a run. It's figuring out about the distance between me and the curb, how far my stride is, and the path that I should take to where I will never have to break my stride. That's incredible. But the truth of it is, every one of us does these fantastic mathematical problems all the time in our head. Our brains are doing this, even those kids who say, I don't do math. Here's why this is important that kids do math. When high-tech companies are making devices that we like to use simpler and simpler for us, that means the complexity is actually all on the back end. It's more complex for them to manufacture. They need more people with skills in high sciences, which are dependent on math. Right now in the United States, there are about 6,000 candidates for PhD in the hard sciences. In China alone, there are 12,000. And the numbers are actually more stark than that, because of those 6,000 in the US, about 4,000 of them are actually foreign students studying in the US. And so next time you see high-tech jobs moving overseas, recognize this as a fact. It's not all about cost. Cost is a factor. But when they need those high-tech skills, those science skills, and they're not available in the US, they have to go where the skills are, and they have to move those jobs overseas. I have a confession to make. I wasn't always good at math. My most vivid memory of second grade was the whole school was getting to go to the gymnasium to watch a movie. It was going to be fantastic, right? I mean, no school, no work. I was going to get to hang out with my friends. It's going to be a fun day. I didn't get to go. See, I was behind in my math, so I had to stay back in the classroom and work with the teacher. When my dad found out about it, he decided to do something. My dad was a bread truck driver. He delivered bread to grocery stores and restaurants. At the end of the day, he would have this sales book where he would have all his sales from the day, and he'd have to add those up and then turn those in the next morning. Well, after that day, he said, okay, Ron, from now on, I am not going to add up my sales. You are going to do that for me. I was excited. I mean, I was in second grade. I was helping my dad with his job, right? So at the end of every school day, when my dad would get home, I would add up these long lists of numbers. Guess what? Pretty soon, I got to be pretty good at math. It's probably a good thing, or my dad would have been fired at some point, but I got good enough that I actually decided to study in college, and I have a degree in math. So what about these kids that like math in fourth grade, but no longer like it in ninth grade? What happens? Here's my theory. The math does get more complex when we get into middle school. And they come home and they say, Mom, Dad, I need help with my homework. and mom and dad look at the math and say, you know what? That's just not something I can help you with. And those students hear implicit approval that they hear, my family does not do math, therefore I don't do math. See, for those parents whose experience is they'd go home at the end of the day and they'd have a book that they'd be able to open up with their parents and work through math problems together, don't know what to do now because there's no book. And it's even more stark for those parents who are not technically savvy. They're not used to being able to just Google it. So we need to find a way to provide better resources for parents to where they can be more engaged in their students' education. You see, I was fortunate. I had a dad who not only recognized I needed help with math, but had a solution that he was able to implement. When we're talking about providing resources for teachers and students, we need to remember to provide resources for the parents as well. Because you know what? We all have awesome brains, even if your brain's not quite as awesome as mine.